I want to talk to Mary. Thank you so much, Mary, for coming into the studio. So first, do a proper introduction now that all the technical difficulties are done. Tell us who you are, what you're about, and what you're running for.
Absolutely. Well, one, thank you for having me, and
Of course.
have no problem coming back again because I feel very cool in here with all this radio equipment. My name is Mary Cole. I am currently a candidate for Lake County State's Attorney here in Lake County. Do you want to know more about my background? Or?
Yeah, tell us.
All right.
Give us the whole origin story as if you're a superhero.
All right. Well, I was born and raised in Lake County. I have a brother and 2 living parents who are fantastic. I graduated from Deerfield High School. I have been working in the criminal justice system for about 16 years
wow.
in several different capacities. So my first job in the criminal justice system was not as a lawyer. I was a domestic violence victim advocate at a state's attorney's office in Southern Illinois, which followed me going to SIU. After that, I was a paralegal for our judges in Lake County. And then I was doing that while I was studying to get into law school. And I went to law school because I wanted to be a prosecutor, specifically a domestic violence prosecutor.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, but I got out of law school, finished on time, all that jazz. I was supposed to work at the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, but they had an election season. So I guess that summer, there was a changing of the guard, and Kim Fox ended up winning the primary, and she didn't really honor the wait lists. So,
Oh, no.
it's okay. It was life had a plan. So I ended up spending my first 2 years as a practicing attorney in DeKalb as a public defender, which is a job I never thought I would do. In fact, it's like the opposite of what I thought I would do, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm defending the people who I thought I was going to lock up and get the bad guys. But it was a very important role for me to embrace because it really balanced out my understanding of the criminal justice system. I truly believe that when it comes to whether it be victims or defendants, justice only happens when people are treated with dignity and respect in the system. So
I'd agree with that.
yes. So anyways, so that happened. And then suddenly I got a call from Lake County, my hometown, and there was an opening at the Lake County State's Attorney's Office under Mike Nierheim. I interviewed there and instantly just fell in love with the office. And so that's kind of where I embarked on my first role as an actual prosecutor in the State's Attorney's Office. I loved working under Mike Nierheim. To be frank, I'm kind of a nerd. I was that weirdo that was there on the weekends, won silly awards for, whatever. I was annoying. I was that person.
When you love what you do, it's not a nerd.
So that I made some lifelong friends there. I loved the work, the trial work. However, again, there was an election, and in 2020, Mike Nierheim lost the election, and the current state's attorney that's there now, Eric Reinhardt, took over. So I worked under both administrations. I decided eventually to leave the office based on my opinion that there were some ideological issues with how he was running the office, and I just disagreed with a lot of his choices. And
So can I interrupt? I've got a question.
Yes.
So because not everybody knows exactly what the state's attorney's office does, can you give just a kind of like a 15-second, what is the state's attorney, what do they do, and why are they elected as opposed to just hired, or how it works?
Understood. So the state's attorney's office is basically the body of authority in the government that is charged with prosecuting crimes. So most people think about crime, they think of the police, but the police kind of start the process, but it's up to the lawyers in the state's attorney's office to make a legal decision to bring charges against a person and to be a voice for victims of crime and to keep the community safe. So it's a pretty big deal.
Sure. So I see now why ideological decision-making could play a role in the efficacy of that office or how hard or soft on crime they are.
Right. And I think my first criticism as far as ideology, and I don't even know if ideology is the right word, the office became very political almost instantly. And that's something that I didn't understand was even on the table until it became political. And
So that's not normal. That's not typical.
No. The state's attorney's
under
office,
Nierheim?
right.
Not at all.
And I've worked in other offices. It's just not, you don't want justice dictated by how far left or right society is going, right? Justice is supposed to be blind. Justice is about doing what's right in a given case. And so when you throw politics into it, the way you throw politics into anything,
Sure.
it muddies the water and it creates problems. So eventually, I left. I left because there was a supervisor that told some of the young assistants that they weren't allowed to use the word victim. She, I guess, said that we were allowed to use the term alleged victim or complaining witness, but there's no such thing as victims.
Whoa.
And I was a victim advocate, right? And I take that role seriously. And also, to backtrack, I was a victim in a criminal case, which is also part of why I went to law school to become a prosecutor, because I knew what it was like to be in the system in that perspective. And I think the role of the prosecutor is a very honorable job, and it's very important, because a victim in a case, unlike the accused, if someone's a defendant, they can hire or fire their own defense attorney if they don't feel like things are going right. A victim in a case doesn't have that choice.
Oh, really?
They don't get to hire a new prosecutor or fire the one they have. They're just hoping that whoever gets their case, whoever that stranger is, does their job and cares, right? And so when people in that office don't do their job, it has a huge impact on society.
Of course.
So, and also there, the morale with regard to law enforcement, that's definitely dwindled these past few years. And we just need some change. So that's why I'm running.
Well, that's a very, very honorable thing to do, and I appreciate you doing it. But I got to ask you, campaigns and politics are some of the nastiest things that we go through, and it seems to be getting worse and worse every year with these flyers and mailers going out that this person's terrible, this person's going to destroy the country, this person's the worst person since, the name we won't mention, Voldemort. And so what inspired you to actually get off the bench and put yourself up for that type of interactions?
Well, I was first encouraged to do it by my former boss and someone who I look up to, who I consider a mentor, Mike Nierheim, right? I trust him dearly, and he's the one who originally asked me to consider running in 2024. I said, "You're crazy. Can I please have my letter of recommendation?" And I will be gone now. But as time went on, and I would check back in with the office because I'm so close to a lot of people there, and I was just watching kind of the fallout from what was going on, it became apparent that somebody had to run. And so I was approached again later, and at that point it became clear that no one else was really going to run. And so given the fact that I was asked by the one person in the world who could probably convince me it was a good idea, and because I still cared that much, I decided to do it. And at the end of the day, I tell people this all the time, my campaign colors are purple, because that's the color you get when blue and red come together. And I do think that there's a strong desire from the average citizen, like their nervous systems demand, that we be a little less political, right? And this is an office that has historically operated very well, not being political. And it will be an easy fix once you get there.
Yeah, I got to say, I've heard you speak before, and you don't seem to be rabid one side or the other. It seems like all of your positions that I've heard seem to be, fairly moderate, and with an emphasis on public safety, which I appreciate. I think the whole system has gotten far too partisan, far too political. Things seem to go through just because of a ideological bend and what sounds best in a soundbite, as opposed to foresight and looking at what are the actual effects, future effects of these types of policies. Do you mind? I want to ask you a question. We only got about 5 more minutes because I know you have to run. But do you mind talking at all about the Safety Act?
Sure. Just generally?
Yeah, well, I'll kind of set it up on the tee, and then, my understanding, and correct any misunderstanding. So basically, last year, the Safety Act was implemented. It was pushed by 2 state's attorneys out of the 102 state's attorneys in Illinois. 2 state's attorneys were huge proponents of it, Eric Reinhart and Kim Fox from Chicago. And basically, it eliminates cash bail, pretrial release. It's been called the catch and release program. And ideally what it does, it takes criminals out of the judicial system, puts them in the street to recommit. We see it happening all the time in Chicago. There's some situations where it's happened in Lake County that I'm aware of, that maybe more that I'm not aware of. But do I have that right? And then how do you feel about that?
I think you've spelled it out correctly.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind, real quick, before jumping into that. So I'm hearing what your take is on what the effect is and the fact that it's sending them right back out. Can we talk on what the intended good is behind it, whether or not that's actually happening?
Yes, I think that the intentions
question.
that first gave rise to it, I think it's something everyone can agree with. The idea that two people could be charged with the same thing, and one person could be held in custody and the other be free, on bond, just based on their financial positioning, that was an inequity that I think we can all agree nobody agrees with, right? And so the original intentions of the act were to deal with that inequity. The way I've always put it is the problem is by the time that the bill went through, in remedying that one inequity, they created about 15 others. And more importantly, they created a huge imbalance because that wasn't the only thing that was really addressed. This is like 800 pages of legislation that was passed, in my opinion, written by people who don't really understand how it works. And so when it was supposed to go into effect in January, it was delayed for a while because a lot of the prosecutors in Illinois stood up, and that's Republican and Democrat, except for Kim Foxx and Eric Reinhart, my opponent. Everyone else stood up and said, this is going to be a catastrophe if we don't at least adjust some of it. So thanks to, Bob Berlin and Patrick Neely and State's Attorney Glasgow, they went in and helped amend it a great deal. So the version of what we have it right now is actually much better than it was. You can still disagree with the overall act, but it's much better than what it would have been.
Okay.
And this was opposed by Republican and Democrat state's attorneys throughout the state, right? It was a bipartisan opposition. So this isn't, red meat politics we're talking here. This is kind of valid concerns from the public and the people who actually practice the law.
Correct. And it's not a surprise that it doesn't work for the entire system because it really wasn't designed to necessarily, help victims of crime or keep the community safer. It was designed to address an inequity with those people accused of crime, right? So it's not a giant surprise that the fallout,
Kind of a hard sell.
Yeah, exactly. and mind you, my opponent, Mr. Reinhart, he had never prosecuted before. Like he was a defense attorney for 18 years. He had never even prosecuted a speeding ticket. So for him to become like the chief prosecutor and to kind of promote that legislation, I guess in that regard isn't a giant surprise. It's a bit too political for my taking.
Sure,
but,
without actual knowledge of how it works.
Right.
We only got a couple more minutes, so I do want to give you an opportunity. I know you have an event coming up. So because we're community radio, we have very specifics. We can't tell people to go anywhere, but we can tell them where you'll be. Okay. And we can't say if there's a price of admission. We can't say how much it is, unless it's free, of course. But I do know you have an event coming up tonight, so tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, I would love to meet everybody who's listening right now. I will be at First Draft in Grays Lake this evening at 5:30. If you come in and say that you listen to Dick Barr's radio station, you're not going to have any trouble getting in. And even if you don't, you'll have no trouble getting in. I would love to have an opportunity to kind of explain in greater detail why I'm doing this and what I think we can change for the better. I think that people feel very burnt out right now, but there's a lot of reason to have hope, and there's a lot of reason for everyone to muster up the courage to try and build a better tomorrow.
I mean, that's such a great point, and I love that you used the word hope because here's my hope, that we can start having conversations again and stop being so divided. But it doesn't help. Everything comes out on Facebook, social media, the news media. Everything is it looks like it's intent to be divisive. And I don't think it's doing us any good. So thank you for kind of being that moderate purple voice in the greater narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's anything that our regular listeners hear me say over and over again, we get a lot of questions about how to find the best place to go, right? And I'm always preaching that's great. Let's try and find the best place to go. But what can we do to make it here great, right here, right
Absolutely.
now? Where are you and how can you make it better? And I just think it's really cool that you decided that now is the time for you to take that on and do that for your community as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And just so you guys know, I know everyone's like, oh, well, can change really happen? This is one office where the state's attorney has such broad discretion that one person can make a giant difference. And so this is a race to pay attention to. It is.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. I know you've got a tight day. Thank you. I hope you'll come back and be one of our featured interviews, because we have a lot of fun when we're not having technical difficulties, and we just have kind of great conversations. And a lot of time our guests will come in and just be a part of the whole show and kind of put in their 2 cents. And so you have an open invitation anytime. You're welcome back. Mary Cole, running for Lake County State's Attorney, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Hope to see you guys tonight.
Great. Yes, I'll definitely be there.